Good morning, good afternoon to all the distinguished panelists and participants. It is my great pleasure to be here with you today in the celebration of the International Day of Women and Girls in Science. This year, for us, is particularly special as we celebrate the 10th anniversary of this important day. For a decade now, we have marked the 11th of February as a moment of highlight the importance of advancing gender equality in science, not just as a matter of fairness, but as a necessity for better science that can help us address the world's major challenges. Scientific excellence thrives on diversity, yet women continue to be underrepresented in STEM fields. Today, women still make up only one third of the global scientific community. In some countries, even fewer than 10% are researchers, female researchers. And in the G20 countries, only 22% of STEM jobs are held by women. These numbers are not just statistics. They reflect the missed potential of millions of talented women and girls who could be shaping the future of science, technology, and innovation. We must do better, and we must do it urgently. But we must also ask ourselves, why do so few girls even consider a future in STEM in the first place? Research shows that biases take root at a very young age, shaping girls' perceptions of their own abilities, interests, and ambitions. From the toys they play with to the books they read, subtle messages can reinforce engendered expectations. For example, while boys are often encouraged to play with construction sets and science kits, girls are more likely to receive dolls or toys that focus on caregiving roles. These early experiences shape aspirations and limit possibilities. Then comes high school, a key stage that can either reinforce or break down these barriers. This is the moment when girls decide whether to pursue science, whether or not they belong in STEM. They might also not see themselves in these careers because they are not aware of the vast opportunities that a science background can offer. At UNESCO, we are deeply committed to promoting gender equality in STEM, not only by supporting women scientists in their careers, but also by ensuring that young girls have the opportunity to dream, aspire, and believe that they too can be part of the global scientific community. This is particularly relevant now as 2024 marked the launch of the International Decade of Science for Sustainable Development, reinforcing clearly the critical role of science in shaping a better future for all. And for that, we need all. We cannot still exclude 50% of the population. Just this week on Tuesday, we had the honor of hosting the event Unpacking STEM Careers, Rare Voice in Science at UNESCO to mark this anniversary. More than 1,800 people joined us in person and online from the four corners of the world. High school students were among the audience, and it was clear that this topic resonated deeply with them. Their engagement reaffirmed how important it is to have these conversations with the young people directly and to have them hear the passion from scientists, because representation and inspiration goes hand to hand. A year ago exactly, we were launching the UNESCO Call to Action, Closing the Gender Gap in Science. This initiative aimed to renew commitment to promoting and supporting women and girls in science, providing a global framework for multi-stakeholder action. It provides recommendations to ensure that from the early stage of education, girls receive the encouragement, the role models, and the opportunities they need to pursue science with confidence. I am delighted to share with you today that the call to action has already made a significant impact. With over 6,000 people assessing the documents we have online, we are seeing a global movement taking shape. Thousands of individuals, institutions, and organizations around the world are coming together and sharing good practices. And thanks again to the organizers, because this is precisely what we are looking for in our call of action, that you have some information also in the tables if you are interested to join this huge movement. As part of our ongoing efforts, we also realize that it is essential to show the future generations why having more women in science is so important. This is why I'm pleased to announce that we have launched a global communication campaign this week titled Imagine a World with More Women in Science, and with the hashtag Every Voice in Science. This campaign invites everyone, from scientists and educators to students to policymakers, to reflect on what would be different in their field if more women were involved in science. The campaign is still going, and I invite all of you to add your voice to the conversation by sharing your thoughts on social media using our hashtag Every Voice in Science. And we are very happy because in 2 days, I think we have this amount of participation. So I'm hoping that all of you will be part also of these contributors, because we need, through this campaign, not only raise the profile of the discussions that we will have today, breaking high school barriers, empowering girls to see themselves in STEM, but also to understand what are the structural barriers that we have to fight, both on the education system, also on our social fabric through our families and friends, but also at the workplace, that can really promote more inclusive opportunities for girls and women in STEM. So thank you very much. Belated happy International Day of Women and Girls in Science. And I'm looking forward to listen to our panelists. Thank you.
Thank you, Lydia. Thank you for this introduction to our event. While we should be happy that the International Day for Women and Girls in Science celebrates its 10th edition this year, thereby honoring the importance of gender balance in STEM careers, the situation is overall remaining very concerning, with high school girls in particular steering away from math way too early and way too often, still everywhere. France is no exception, and today we might focus on France in particular, with too many girls giving up maths and girls being in particular underrepresented in the advanced math option in high school, an option known to facilitate their later selection into scientific careers. Why can't we seem to change this? How come? In France last week, the French Court of Accounts published a report severely denouncing the fact that the 3.3 billion euros allocated to the policy in favor of gender balance in 2024 was poorly used and remains particularly ineffective at convincing girls to keep a focus on sciences. So if only what? Today, I will ask 5 women highly involved in encouraging girls to go into science to share with us how they imagine this kind of budget could be used more effectively. Each of them has dealt with the challenge of women aiming at a STEM career. Each of them has long observed what is going on at schools. For the next hour, we will enjoy their perspective on how to break high school barriers to foster the choice of math and an orientation towards a scientific career. So before we get started, I'll briefly introduce each of you. First, Ariane Thomas, bonjour. You are the Global Tech Director of Sustainability at L'Oréal since 2021. I first want to thank you for hosting us in such a beautiful auditorium like you do every year. L'Oréal has championed women scientists to excel in their domains for more than 20 years, if I'm correct. And I hope you will share with us what can be done to have more women become scientists in the first place. Elisabeth Richard, bonjour. You are a member of the High Council for Gender Equality. You have also been in charge of women's position within ENGIE since 2006, almost 20 years ago. You have been a keen observer of the environmental factors preventing women to go into scientific careers. Maud Tournou, bonjour. You are a data science manager at Schneider Electric with a PhD in applied maths and biostatistics. I hope you will share with us what brought you to where you are today and what conditions you believe are critical in allowing women to embrace science. Karine Vasselin, bonjour. You are Group Diversity and Inclusion Lead at Capgemini. You, on paper, you are not a scientist. However, you like to emphasize that you could have become an engineer, chose to go to Sciences Po instead, but this did not prevent you to come back to scientific focus later on in your roles at Capgemini. And I hope we can hear more about how you embrace science coming from a non-scientific training. And finally, Charlotte Laclos, bonjour. You are Associate Professor at Télécom Paris in the Institut Polytechnique de Paris. You are a scientist, you are a researcher in machine learning today, and in your free time you go around high schools to directly talk with students to demystify science and give them a sense of why a scientific career can be particularly attractive. So, welcome to you all. Thank you for taking the time today to share your experiences. And the first thing I'd like to ask each of you is to please share what brought you to championing women in sciences. Maybe Ariane, do you want to open this one?
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Laure. I'm very pleased to have you here at L'Oréal. It's really a very important moment when we gather together tackling this subject about science, AI, and the role of women. And I'm very pleased that on this round table today, we are all women, but still some very expert data scientist male in the room, and we need men also within this discussion. What bring me to this science thing is I don't remember if when you were at school the experience made by your biologist the professor or your physician professor. In my class it always failed, and the question about the failure and the fact that you have critical thinking, that there are different options, that you go beyond some frontier, and that the science were not exact, was really at stake for me. And it was really something that in my brain, where in my family there was always achieving excellence, there is room within science in order to fail, in order to find new feature, and that was very important for me. After that, within my studies, I study immunogenetic at the time of AIDS, where AIDS was the beginning, and again it was a question how bring science solutions to concrete problem of the world, and there was this huge, massive AIDS disease in the world, so it was also being kind of powerful tool, not in order to solve some concrete problems. So, and after that, I entered L'Oréal, and again here, it's we all have this stereotype regarding cosmetics, that just something that is superficial, and not at all. It's super scientific, the role of the molecules in order to help the skin, to bring better barriers, to have better footprint was also really a discovery for me, and something very strong. and where I do believe that we have concrete results with our products. So that's my journey.
Wonderful. Maud?
Thank you for this invitation first. So I'm very happy to be here to discuss such an important topic with all of you. So Maud Tourneau, I am a data science manager at Schneider. So I joined Schneider 3 years ago. And what we do at Schneider is to develop AI solution either for internal function to increase efficiency or for our external customer to make the most of energy and resources using AI. So back in the past, from where I come from, so I was good at math in high school and really like biology and life sciences. So what I did is that I chose something that to have the best compromise between mathematics and health science. So I did a master degree in bioinformatics and mathematics and modeling, and then a PhD in data science, working on HIV transmission between from mother to child and impact of breastfeeding. And then I did a postdoc and I joined Biomérieux. So Biomérieux is an in vitro diagnostic company. So there, it was not really a topic. I imagine as in L'Oréal with, we have a great gender balance because it's a life science domain. So for me, it was not really a topic. And then I spent several years at Biomérieux, and when I joined Schneider, it was a kind of a different environment, and I think at that time I say, it's something I want to work on gender diversity, and for me it's a very important topic because I really deeply think that diversity is key for our teams, for our creativity. It's not only me, it has been shown in several studies, but I'm deeply convinced about the energy you have when you have a good gender balance in the team. So that's very important. And that's why I think it's very important to champion this topic. And
yes, and I forgot to mention, as I do this every year, I am a professor in behavioral science, and behavioral science research shows overwhelmingly that indeed the more you inject women in teams, the greater collective intelligence you get simply through different perspectives, which is particularly the case for science. Karine Vasselin, you're the least scientific person on the board, and yet you champion women in sciences. Can you tell us what brought you to that initiative?
Yes, thank you, Laure. Effectively, I had the opportunities when I was in high school to start a career in STEM and becoming an engineer, because I went through a specific competition with Naval Group, and it was so famous in Cherbourg, where I come from, and with my family, that I was really encouraged to do so. But at that time, I wanted to be a sport journalist. So I embraced another path, but then after 27 years in Capgemini, I realized really the power of tech to build clearly the future with a promise on positive impact on health, on business, on society. And through my career, even if I didn't have specific core tech roles, technology was still around, and I needed to cultivate this appetite for tech and knowledge and keep this in mind. And of course, I realized that there were not enough women in our company, even if we have strong ambitions, and especially not in core tech roles. And it is really important that they bring their specific insight and perspective to be sure that we develop tech that are not biased and that really covers the full scope of the people needs and our client needs. And in my personal life, I was really influenced as well by what happened to my daughters, because I've got 2 daughters, and they were treated totally differently by, I would say, the educational system. The first one, before she went even to high school, she had the chance to meet a professor who every day was telling us, "Charlotte, you'll be an astronaut one day." And since then, I think it became possible in our mind. And of course, I did as a parent as much as I could to try to nurture this appetite through encouraging Lego, through bringing her to scientific forums and so on, to cultivate this taste. And she became an engineer. On the other one, we went back to France and living UK. I think it has had an impact. She was very good at math as well, but she was so discouraged by a professor who was so severe, always putting the bar too high and taking failure, as you mentioned, as an habit and as a pedagogical approach, that she lost confidence. And so at the end, she didn't choose a STEM orientation. She went through a management school. But now, as she always kept math in the background, she realized that she has now the possibility to apply for a career in finance, so mixing management and math, and offering this rewarding and not gender balanced path. But that is her choice now.
Okay, so you're pointing to the importance of authority figures, right, throughout education, and certainly there is at least correlational evidence showing that the more authority figures, the more women scientists, and the more men pro-women scientists girl will encounter throughout childhood, the more likely it is that she will contemplate
because both teachers were
careers.
male. One very encouraging, and another one too much destroying self-confidence.
Correct.
Yeah.
So yes, I insist on it's not necessarily a female scientist that is important, but someone who really empowers women in particular to enter sciences. Elisabeth Richard, what brought you to championing women in science?
Hi everyone, thank you L'Oréal for receiving us today. I always say that it's very difficult to work within ENGIE because ENGIE is not so glamorous as L'Oréal is. We always speak after you and during conferences with young girls in France, with Capital Phi, for example, and the chance you have that you have role models. And the subject for young people is role models, is one of the subjects. I have another theory, but this is a subject. So within ENGIE, we have the chance to have Catherine MacGregor. She doesn't work for beauty, but she works for beauty for the world, and energy transition is a real field where we can give sense to young people. So it's really key to have young girls going in STEMs to go within our company as Schneider or ENGIE. But it's complicated. It's very complicated because we don't have enough women with Catherine. We need more women in the executive committee and more women at all the levels of the company. And I always say that I'm not an engineer, but I'm doing social and societal engineering to give solutions, to be operational, to have more women, more girls in STEMs and within our company. I'm at the board of Femmes Numérique. We are many companies in it, in this incredible foundation, and we try to bring solutions to young women to come in, to be involved in our company. So it's one of my fights. Mon combat, I would say in French, and the rest is a real systemic problem. But if you want me to speak about that later, I'll do it with pleasure.
Absolutely, that will be my next question. But before, I'd like to hear what brought Charlotte to the career she's having in machine learning research.
Very recently, I never really questioned diversity in my area, although it's mostly men, in computer science especially. I think it came for mainly two reasons. So in research and in academia, we have positive discrimination, like in a lot of places for hiring. And at some point, I started to meet with colleagues who told me how lucky I was to be a girl in this field, because this actually opened me more doors than closed. So it kind of was bothering me. And so I initially kind of rejected the idea of trying to participate in this kind of events because I wanted to prove my equality as a scientist more than as a woman in science. So this was one thing. And then I think 3 years ago, I started to work research-wise on algorithmic fairness. So for those who are not aware, but it's like, how do we make artificial intelligence algorithm more fair towards like some particular group? And for instance, women is a very recurrent case. And so I started to work on this. And when you work on the topic, you realize that most of the problems comes from the data that are used to fuel the AI algorithm. And then I was like, oh, so the problem is not really the AI, it's the person who are producing the data, and the person who are producing the data, it's us, humans. So I decided, okay, maybe like in order to really have an impact on that topic, like let's keep on working on fairness for AI, but also try to see like if there is something to do with people directly. And not that I've lost interest in our generation, but I decided to go for younger, so high school and even a bit younger kids now. And I think that's a good way also to try and go in the right direction on that topic. So that was my journey there.
Right, and so you are really on the front line, several of you, in fact, with girls in high school. So if you don't mind, well, I know that you're extremely active in the working environment and in pushing women in their careers. Once, I want to say, the games have been played, I'd like us to go back to the class of seconde, if we focus on the French system, when girls are 15, and they are confronted with the choice of what they are going to select as subject matters that they will pursue for the next couple of years until they finish high school. My question is simple. It could be tempting to say, well, the reason that there are not so many women in STEM is multifactorial. In fact, there are 50 reasons why, right? And that's always a nice one to go by, because that's also one way to say, there's nothing we can do, right? It's so hard to move these things. It goes back generations. It's deeply ingrained cultural norms, etc., etc. Okay, that's one way to look at it. What I'd like us to do today is maybe an exercise, maybe it's a hypothetical, but my question to you is, do you think there could be one elephant in the room, one reason, one driving force that if we unlock that, I'm not saying we're going to solve the problem magically, but we will have moved forward, or at least we will gather benefits that are much broader than focusing on one little issue here and a little issue there. And here I'm thinking of Elisabeth, an early conversation preceding this roundtable with Elisabeth Richard, who, with 20 years of observation,
yes.
I believe you have things to say there.
Well, I have a theory, I'm sorry. With this experience, I've been working a lot on gender equality, and since 7 years around, I've been working on violence. Again, I've been fighting against violence on women and children. And I've started on women, and within ENGIE now, and we're very proud of that. The emergency numbers of the state are on our invoices, on the 11 million invoices during all the year, not only the 25th of November, but during all the year. You have the 19, 114 and 17, the 114 and 17. But it's not enough, even. It's not enough. And I've been working a lot on the subject within ENGIE. And one day, a young woman came and see me. She was a sport champion. She's now 37 years old, but she's been raped by her coach during 2 years when she was 12 years old. She was really, really how would I say, a talent to be in the 10 champion of the young series of tennis player. She's been raped by this man during 2 years, and she has and she asked me to help her on to fight against sexual violence on minors in sports. And I said, well, I work for ENGIE. You know, even at ENGIE, Catherine sometimes thinks, well, you're doing a lot. And sports, you know, it's far from us. But she explains me that she's been raped everywhere, and during events like the Open, we have a tennis Open, just behind les badges de sponsors. I don't know how to say it in English. Derrière des badges de sponsors.
Behind the sponsors' billboards.
Yes, behind the sponsors' billboards. Thank you. And I said, what? So you imagine you're L'Oréal, you are Capgemini, you are Schneider, you are even Polytechnic, and you are sponsor of an event, and you know now, because the numbers are crazy, the data are crazy, that 1 child out of 7 is raped in France. Okay? We have in France, the number is incredible, 7 million of children who have a license, a sport license, an official one. So it means that around 900,000 children have been raped in France. Okay? In these numbers, you have 45% of girls and 15% of young boys. Imagine that you've been raped or you sexual harassed and all those things when you were young. You didn't speak to your family, or you've already forgot it. Imagine an instant that you're going to study in STEMs with boys at 17, 18, 19 or 20 years old? No. So this is a systemic, real fléau. I don't know how to say it.
Plague.
Plague?
A plague, yes.
And this is for me the one of the subjects that we don't have so many girls in STEMs in France. I'm sorry, we never say that, but the numbers are crazy. And even in a classroom, a normal classroom, 1 child out of 10 has been raped by the family, incest. It's crazy. It's really crazy. And we don't address this problem.
So it's an interesting step aside, right? Rather than looking at the nitty-gritty detail of policies that we could be implementing, what do our other panelists think of this idea that tackling maybe not math, but tackling violence at school from an early age and trying to appease relationships, dialogue between genders? What do you think of that as one way to approach the problem in math, even if it's going to be a far down consequence of dealing with violence? Charlotte?
It's never a question I really ask myself, to be truly honest. Of course, it's interpelling, like when you hear the numbers. Yes, probably not everything can be changed just within the framework of school. That I agree. I would say that's probably somewhere we have to think broader than just what is happening in school, and are the teachers doing their job properly, or can we just have more mathematics projects for showing the girls that they can make it. Of course, you can do a lot of things within the school, outside of school probably as well, but I've never really question myself outside of this scope. But it's a very interesting point of view for sure.
What do other panelists, Ariane?
Yes, if I may. So it was really. I do agree with the fact that it's systemic. So there is a kind of question that we have in front of us if we want to escape the multi-factor situation. There is still a kind of systemic situation, and in order to answer your question regarding sexual violence, it's very important for me, if I have only one thing to address, is raise your voice. The Me Too movement made lots of us think, because it was suddenly possible to say this is not normal, this is what's happening to me, and I'm not shy, and I'm avoiding to put a drama on the table, and it's normal to raise the voice. So either the young sportsmen who are facing that, we should tell them it's not normal. So all the communication campaign in order to raise the awareness, this is happening, and you should not stay alone with that type of situation. It's very important. At L'Oréal, we are having lots of stop street harassment campaign, and it's really something where even at the workplace, it starts with the workplace where we do face less number of that type of situation, where still raise your voice is something that you don't feel you are not feeling well. Raise your voice, and it will go his way in order to change the behavior. Often the people are not doing that in a bad with bad volunteer. It's just bad joke at the workplace. So raise your voice and don't stay alone with that type of situation. Regarding the fact, and we are here in order to say, girls in science, you have your place. So you have your place in the studies. You have your place in the career path. So for me, it's also we are having the young girls within our organization at the age of second or 15 years old for 1 week, and it's to ensure that we put them in front of women that are successful and that they are having a nice career, they are balancing their family life and their professional life. Lots of our children have seen us still worked 12 hours a day, coming back, raised by the after school garden or by a nunu, and they are asking us, do I want to have this type of life? No, merci. So it's also for us to raise role model that are well balanced in their life.
Absolutely, and Ariane, there's actually research showing that women who work, well, that's one of the biggest favors they can do to their daughters in terms of role model, number one, but not only, even behavior at home. Who repairs the live box? Who tackles the IT issues around the house? Mindlessly, on average, it's the man still today. And it's very important for women to take the time, if they can, to take on these roles, because we first learn through imitation. That's one of the main drivers of learning behavior throughout our life, but particularly in childhood. And so interventions like this at home can have long-term benefits that we often underestimate. Maud?
Yeah, so for sure, I mean, this is a very important issue, and we have to work on that at a systemic level. And it's okay, it might have an impact on the fact that girls do not embrace scientific careers, for sure, but it goes far beyond that. So it's really a very important problem. Yes. And for me, another elephant in the room is it's gender stereotypes. And for me, that's really key. Preparing this roundtable, I listened to a podcast by Isabelle Collet called des ordis, des souris et des hommes. So I warmly encourage you to listen to that podcast. And to illustrate gender stereotypes, she mentioned the case of Malaysia. So in Malaysia, you have a lot of women working in informatics, and it's because informatics, it's clean, it's safe, it does not require physical force. You can work from home, so you can work and take care of your kids. You don't have traveling issues. So, and in Western Europe or in the US, it's totally different. So informatics is for men because you need to have abstraction skills and so on and so on. So this is, I think, a very good illustration of what is gender stereotypes. And why does it matter? So that's the key question here. What is the impact of gender stereotypes? And there have been several studies on that topic, including the gender stereotype threats. And some studies have shown very clearly that the impact of gender stereotypes on self-confidence for women in mathematics. They have done this, maybe if I can take 2 minutes to detail this study because I think it's important. So they took very good students, boys and girls in maths, and they tried to replicate the gender stereotype. And they first took an easy math test, and everybody performed equally. And then they told to students, okay, it's a difficult one that time. And then, okay, girls underperform compared to boys. So this was the first study. And they replicated the same study with a difficult test, but then they said to boys and girls that this test has been done previously, and we did not observe difference between girls and boys' results. And guess what? That time, there was no difference between girls and boys. Why? Because we removed stereotypes, threats in this study. So I think it's key, and we observe that in high school with girls being much less confident in their ability to do math, and we do not observe that in French, for example. So that's really important, and it's part of the explanation that we don't have so many girls taking also math expert, and then not embracing scientific careers, and then all the consequences for hiring girls in STEM.
And it's interesting because it resonates with what was earlier said, and that we may be under-realized. So absolutely, there's a vast literature now on stereotypes. We know that elephant in the room. And it's interesting, you were mentioning I work for ENGIE and it's hard for us to recruit, right? Whereas for L'Oréal, it's easy. Well, I look at this room and our auditors and our viewers won't see it, but we're surrounded with pictures of gorgeous women. Very well made up and supposedly, I guess, wearing L'Oréal products. But these women are presumably also models, right? And I wonder sometimes if we shouldn't put female scientists up there with beautiful female scientists, right? And then would that change the extent to which girls would want to live up to those role models? You were saying, Ariane, that at L'Oréal, science is everywhere, and it is. And indeed, when you talk to girls about L'Oréal as a career, they do project themselves at L'Oréal. They do less at an ENGIE, maybe because there's an absence of imagery, right, and fantasy. And so perhaps for these companies, and at the government level and at the private level of those companies, bringing forward the faces of women in a much more public space, and in a space that young girls in particular can relate to, that would be one way to we will not kill the stereotypes, but at least mitigate it or create new stereotypes that are more current. Karine?
If I may add something on this, clearly for a company like ours, Capgemini, it's really difficult for young and teenagers to really realize what our jobs and what our business are about. For 25 years, I've been trying to explain to my own mother what I was doing, and she never caught it. And so what we do is that we have to go outside the company's boundaries to really showcase not only role models, and this is very important, but as well the variety of the jobs that we do, and they are not all for geeks. And so that's why it is really important for the high school, where the choice of orientation and future career projection is made, to represent the variety of the scope of businesses and roles, and see that depending the role, the STEM is around in the background, but at diverse degree, and they could master it. And typically for teenagers in high school, so we go through the different lycées with a kit, which is not branded for our company, but really tries to represent the variety of the diversity of the tech roles, to make them a bit more familiar with them and discover that this exists, and that doesn't require to be a geek to apply for it. And something that was really insightful, and I hope it will continue, we never know, but I hope it will continue, was the 2 weeks of post-second internship that was launched last year, because it was the opportunity for us to build, so very quickly, but an immersive program of 2 weeks for cohorts of students coming from different lycées in different areas where we operate. And we made a percentage of 60% of girls to be sure that we were really diverse and attracted different profiles. And during 2 weeks, we had different sessions trying to make them gamified and exchange opportunities with role models, male and female, to try to make their role and their business as understandable and as tangible as possible, to make them concrete, and so open new things and new roles they wouldn't even imagine.
Interesting. So we have now 2 elephants in the room. That's still manageable, right? Violence, manageable. Violence and imagination. Are there other initiatives that you either spearheaded or had feedback on that you think could be interesting to put in the spotlight today?
If I may, and because of the presence of UNESCO with us, I would like to remind the impact of the For Women in Science partnership with UNESCO that had. You may remember all these scientific women in the airport.
In the airport, yes.
Showing, the partnership started 26 years ago, and a little bit more before with Elena Rubinstein already at that time. And it was really meant to tackle something else that we did not discuss yet. There is the first step in order to engage women into scientific career paths, and then there was the question about senior position. And in the world, we had in all the country, we had lots of scientific women, but they were not getting the visibility, their research were not exposed to, and suddenly you have with this partnership just a highlight, very clear and concise regarding what was they're doing. And today I was looking at the figures, and it's pretty massive. We have 7 Nobel Prize laureates. So at that time there were not Nobel Prize, and we have exposed more than 400 women scientists within those 26 years of partnership, tackling all the science sectors. And in order to also fuel the pipe with new young scientists, we raised, and it was the case last Tuesday at the UNESCO, the Girls Rising Talent, where more than 54,000 girls were exposed to scientific, were engaged in discussion with scientific, and that worldwide in lots of different countries. So France, and you mentioned the report of the Cour des Comptes, it's pretty still good, but when we were going at the CES, you see the percentage of representation of women is super small. The investing in women is small, despite all the diversity KPIs that they had at that time. So it's really very important to fuel the awareness and give the envy to the women to raise their voice and present their project. And this UNESCO partnership has done a lot of very good cascading within the country and in specific scientific sector. But at L'Oréal we have thousands. You were mentioning capital fee, but at personal level I was engaged in Quartier des Talents, Énergie Jeune, going into the school in order to discuss with the class. So there is lots of things to do.
So raising the visibility, multiplying the frequency of points of contacts with young girls. So it takes a village, right? It cannot be done only by companies or only by the government. It really embarks everybody. This makes me think of a conversation I had briefly with Charlotte before this roundtable. I believe, Charlotte, that you have been looking also at what could be done to foster the imagination around AI for little girls. What could be done in terms of education and pedagogy?
Yeah, so I completely agree with what Karen said, and I think one of the problems is that we're asking young people to choose too early on what they want to be. And when you ask like a teenager, like who's 15, like what do you want to be later, that they're going just to say some jobs that are very well identified, like I want to be a doctor. But it's actually most of them are not going to end up being doctors. And I think that if we rush them to make a choice that early, then they're going to make like the choice that seems the most like likely to fit them. So for girls, because of stereotypes, then they will choose one path and boys like another one. So I think the high school, like all of the laws that have been changing the system in high school, has been forcing them to choose earlier and earlier like what they want to be and to specialize earlier and earlier. And that's probably like one of the biggest issue. Like they should have all their options open until the end of high school and then decide what they want to specialize in. So that's the first thing. And as for education-wise, and there are many initiatives which are happening. Like for me, I'm doing presentations in high schools, and this is with the support of some of the teachers in these high schools. But I know that a lot of other initiatives exist. Like there is El Bouge, who's also trying to go and meet high school students and even like younger ones. And every time it takes a lot of efforts from the teachers who already have like kind of a big thing to carry on with like educating our kids and to researcher like higher educations who are also like quite busy at the time, and it really misses something more global, I think, like, but something that will come from the policy that says, okay, now officially in their education they're going to, I don't know, face some people who will come and present some jobs, or they will have to follow mathematics all the past because it's actually very transversal and we never know if they might need it. So it's like a very strong structural change. And the other thing is, yes, what really works, and this is something that came up frequently during this discussion, is the role models. And I think that they need to have it, and it cannot just be because some women decide to, okay, I'm going to take on my time and do it. It has to be something that should be thought like more globally. So how do we create role models who are like girls in science? And we discussed like what kind of medium could that be? And there was like in Canada they are quite advanced, so they created this Kate AI, so Katya, who's like a young girl like who learns science, and it's a bande dessinée comic. It's a comic book. And it works really well to get them some sense. So like, how do we create role models not only for high schools, but actually younger, because most of the stereotype problems comes from before high school. And yeah, this is something that should be carefully probably thought about. So,
and something of inspiration to a center like High Paris, where we have our 300 researchers in AI thinking and contemplating what to work on. But if we think of tools that could multiply the frequency of contacts of young girls with an imaginary world that could be with maybe avatars even, right? And a language that is more welcoming of girls, that is perhaps less aggressive, less violent. We know also that language matters in shaping desires, right? And that would lead to different stereotypes, right? Or new stereotypes perhaps. Then perhaps AI could be one way, one promise. What do you think? Ariane?
I wanted to jump on that specific part. I wonder who in the room has already been trained on cognitive bias and conscious bias. And for me, that's something that is missing
Alors, quite a few people. Actually, we teach it. You have two professors in behavioral science. That's what we teach. That's basically our bread and butter at the moment. 99% of
for
our
me,
time.
it's very important to engage that also at school and
Correct.
because you don't know what you don't know. So when you see Avatar, my always reaction is that the avatar are very often super sexualized. So how to raise the awareness among the young generation about all these unconscious bias that we have, and it's something in order to go to your science of change behavior is something that is missing for me in the actual path.
I love that comment. The first thing I say to my MBAs and my Grande École student is what we see, and it includes cognitive biases. It goes beyond. It's behavioral decisions, science. That should be taught, I think, as of age 13. So you're spot on right there. Now, that's another advantage of High Paris, because High Paris is not only engineers, it is engineers, and it's bringing together people who know these biases and people who are technical. So when I ask the question of, do you think AI could be a promise? Perhaps a role of a center like High Paris is to build avatars that are not hypersexualized, because we know better, right? And so that's a question for us to think of. Could we develop interventions that would be perhaps more cost effective, that would allow to get at this multiplication of frequency of interaction, different stereotypes, new fantasized world for girls, or not? Is AI for good? Could AI be for good in this domain? What do you think?
Well, I'm not going to speak about that. I'm still on my subject. I'm sorry. It's like a ghost, you know. It's crazy. I just was wondering if we couldn't, at HEC or Polytechnic, have safe places for girls and communicate on that. You come in this school and you'll see. You'll be with your friends and girls, and it's a safe place. I think it's a real subject. Having safe places, we have that in companies. Really, sexual harassment. You don't have. Maybe you have one in our company, and we solve the problem just like that. Air France has a problem today. We received, but in L'Oréal, at Capgemini, Schneider, it's not a problem anymore. In the company, we respect laws. We do what we say, and we say what we do. So we respect everything. So maybe we could ask schools to have safe places, because it's not dresses now.
Alors, at HEC, actually, I have to say, because I was looking at this very closely, I think we're ahead of the game. So
great.
Check it again. Actually, there is a lot of, so we don't call them safe places, but indeed there have been via asking students to take it into their own hands.
Yes,
actually, there is a lot of protection compared to 20, 30 years ago. I did HEC 30 years ago. I can tell you firsthand, it's a very different place today.
I think it's key. I think it's key. When
but
you
I think
see
your point,
Sellier, you saw that we had many subjects on rapes. A lot of boys raped girls in the bedrooms, for girls. So it wasn't a safe place.
Right. So we need to make sure that all schools...
It was in 2024, not 10 years ago. It was yesterday.
Yes.
And the second thing is having quotas. In the company, we love quotas, we love objectives, and you progress if you measure. So that would be great as well to have maybe quotas in schools, because they don't put quotas. They put some objectives just like that, just to see, but they don't have real quotas as we have, even in laws. With the law Copé-Zimmermann, with the law Rixin, or the index Pénicaud, we have laws, and we do what the law asks us. Why don't we do that in schools, higher schools?
Right. So here it's again a question of many parameters. one of them being the excellence, depending on the, I know it's not as easy as meets the eye, but yes, the question of quotas is definitely a good one. Yes, Karine?
Sorry, I need to share the mic with you. I fully understand what you are saying about quotas, because yes, we progress when we measure. However, we are not in favor in quotas internally. We do have more targets that we monitor regularly, but the thing that we do is that we don't want to create the impression that somebody has been hired or promoted just because of their identity, but on their
we are far from the, you know, the
right
feeling having, you know, on the other side.
Yeah, but instead of changing, I mean, the criteria and the things on which people are assessed to, we are really trying to enlarge the net and to be more in a pull and push way, to really try to see to some agencies, some peoples that wouldn't apply naturally to us, and we try as much as possible that to equip them to be successful and to pass the bar, but not changing the bar itself, because we've been some really discussions internally, and this is something that was really a challenge, and so this is the way we proceed.
Okay, on the quotas versus not, I don't want to divert from my main focus today, unless you want to say, are you suggesting that we put quotas of girls in math expert?
For sure. If we want to accelerate, for sure. If you don't want to accelerate, we can be there in 20 years and speak at the same time, same moment, and the company will put a lot of money, and we still won't have enough girls. Look at Polytechnique. We had 21% of girls last year. We have 16% of girls this year.
Polytechnique is struggling. Yes.
Come on.
Right. So it's so quotas as early on as high school, but then you need to follow the lead, because those girls need to do well in order to be later selected into the best prepa or high.
Do you remember when we put the quotas on the Locope Zimmermann on boards, and they said we don't have women. We don't have enough women. You know, we need incredible women.
Yes.
We found, and now all the groups have in their boards 40 or 50% of women. At L'Oréal, they have incredible talents.
Ariane.
No, I disagree. I'm sorry. I'm not in favor of quotas. I think the math expert instill a kind of bias by saying you're expert, you're not expert, and so there was there were some issue before that were not tackled by the split of math expert and not math expert. And second, we are talking about women, but diversity is more large than women, and so whatever quota should we put in order to reach a complete representativity of the society within the excellence arena of our university? So putting quota for me, it's not the answer to dysfunctions that we are facing now. And there were another elephant in the room that we didn't mention, is the fact that today there is a kind of geopolitical movement with some very big tech giant players calling for less diversity, more masculinity, and we all have here a role to play in order to resist.
That is very correct, yes.
That's super important. I don't know what force can stop this movement, but at least I think that I have a very important role that my siblings, my family will have, and that all of you discussing this subject together will have a very important role.
I agree. Again, this notion of it takes a village, right? It's not something to fight something systemic. Unfortunately, policies or governments or private companies or private initiatives, they can help somewhat. But at some point, every one of us, women and men alike, right, has to decide what kind of society they want. And And indeed, having just one dimension can be impoverishing or even counterproductive, right? I mean, change happens, but maybe not as fast. If we want it to be long-lasting, we need to really take it one step at a time. May I, in the interest of time, I know we have a few minutes left before we turn to our audience for questions. I have a very simple question for you all. Imagine you have a 15-year-old young lady in front of you who is in front of these selections, choosing between whether to study law or geopolitics. Today you could think that it's a productive way to spend your time, or science. What would you tell them to influence them to go more towards STEM? Would you? Maud?
Yeah, so I really want to come back on this role model, and I think it's very important that at every level and company level and at Schneider we have ambassadors network to also promote. It has been done for 10 years to go in school and share passion. So because I think passion, to have people talking about their passion is very important. So if these young girls are involved in and can meet this role model, I think it can really help, and it has been shown that it's really effective. So what we could tell also is that okay, when I really agree with Charlotte on the fact that when you take a scientific career, it will allow you, and it's important that role model also highlight that, to have very diverse careers. Because when you join companies and with a technical background, first you can start with a technical background, but then there are tons of opportunity of having very interesting and varied and different career. And at Schneider, it's really impressive that when you talk to people here for a long time and you ask them about their career, so they're starting usually by a technical background, and then they move to marketing, and then to HR, and then to sales. And I think it's important to tell that to young girls, that they have tons of opportunity to do very different things when they embrace scientific career. So that I think it's a key message.
So they'll be more agile.
Yeah, and okay, things are not going very well, but as we have laws and as we have KPIs, I think the corollary of that is that, okay, to have a little bit of hope is that there are great opportunities for girls to have very interesting career in a tech company and science company. So that would be my message, that, okay, even starting with a technical background, you can do whatever you want in company.
Right.
And on top of that, we have very diversity policy to help you to encourage leadership in women. So there are opportunities because things have been put in place to help on that.
So maybe with a scientific career, you have more freedom.
You have a lot of freedom. For sure.
More freedom promised.
Yeah, sure.
More terrain, more playground.
Yeah, and tons of opportunity because really, at least in Schneider, there is a really strong commitment of CEO to promote leadership in women, and a lot of action for that. So I think it's key to remind that and to tell that girls, so that they are aware that, okay, it's a good place to go and they can have great opportunities for their career.
Thank you. Ariane, what would you say?
So for me, at 15 it's already too late. And Lydia was saying it's about toys, it's about media, it's about their network. So having exposed my daughter before to lots of science game, what I wanted her to be sure is that whatever she will do, she will succeed. So that's super important for me to provide confidence. And second is that through science, you can get business. So there is a kind of, if you are doing science, you will be a scientific in a lab. But no, today you can be a very successful entrepreneur, win a lot of money.
Money. Okay. Charlotte, it reminds me of something we discussed because the idea, Charlotte is a researcher, a scientific researcher, so she's in a lab. But what do you have to tell a 15-year-old that's so attractive about your job?
So mine is 4. She's not 15, so I hope that by the time she's 15, things would have changed a bit, and that she would not have to pick between law and math as specialties. Yeah, I saw like there was an article in January in Le Monde about like, oh, I had no idea that a master in mathematics could open so many options, and that was really the focus. And one of the students said, oh, I really thought that applied math was only to become a math teacher. That was the basic idea. And I remember like seeing a researcher coming to present what the job of a researcher was, and of course it's not about the money, although like it could be based on our skills, but it's mostly about like also lifestyle that comes with it. So for instance, we travel a lot, which is something that's very not so known by people who sees us like just teaching in class. We have the very big luck to choose who we work with, and that's also like a lot of freedom. And so the idea is also to, when I go to high school, is also to say that it can also be cool somehow to be a researcher in a lab. But yeah, I don't know what I would tell her. I think I got where I got because like it resembles really what you said. My mom said you can do whatever you want, you just have to work. But then what I was doing didn't really matter. She didn't do any study, neither did my dad. So it was really just about pick whatever you like, but just like get a job out of it. And so I would not necessarily encourage my daughter to go to a science path, but if she likes it, then yes, of course I will like encourage her to do so. So that would be.
Okay, but it's interesting how apologetic you are when you say, you know, research can be cool.
Well, we don't
interesting.
Have
it's
we don't have that
because
image.
actually research is very cool. That's what I tell my students. And at HEC, I actually show my students the average salary of an assistant professor, and they are mind blown. They tell me, we had no idea you actually made a living, which is interesting, talking about stereotypes. So actually, yes, researchers earn a living, a really solid one, maybe a fraction of what you earn in the industry. But as Charlotte is saying, we enjoy insane freedom and insane independence in the work that we do. And those are things that could be attractive to young girls as well. Karine, what would you say to a 15-year-old?
I agree with you. The younger we start, the better it is, because we have to really break the stereotypes and liberate imagination from a young age. And we do sponsor competitions of small robotics and Lego from the age of 8. Even because it shows that yes, science and math are cool, can be fun, but at the same time, I'm maybe a bit naive, but I would say that it's never too late. I mean, we do have as well some returnship programs, some programs that try to upskill women, not only women, but women who take a long career break and that come back to work in their 40s. And we try to, in a few weeks, give them some background, some skills that they could really start having a role in tech, not maybe in all of the functions, not in AI immediately, but not all the tech roles we offer are 100% scientific, and so it's never too late to learn.
Correct. It's not because you don't choose science at 15 that you should shy away from science later on. That's also a key message. I absolutely agree. A very important one to say. And by the way, in the room, I hope you're not going to tell people, young 15-year-olds around you, that, it's too late. You know, it starts at age 4. I'm sorry. Of course, we know that. Yes, it's true. The research shows it. But my point is exactly is what can we do now? What do we tell now to these girls who are making that jump? And the final word before the Q&A, Elisabeth, what would you say?
No, I just wanted to invite you to discover an incredible young woman. She's called Amina Khelil. She comes from the suburbs. She lives in Aulnay-sous-Bois, and she decided to launch the Plan Marshall of the mathematics. She's incredible, and she does that on young people and young girls to love mathematics and to show us how it's easy to have pleasure to do maths. So really, she's incredible, and we help her as within ENGIE. For my girl, she's 16 years old. Her father is an engineer, and I'm not an engineer. I'm a social engineer. I'm doing social engineering. And she's an artist, so she photographs, she sculpts, she's doing sculpture and everything, and so she would like to be an artist. But my husband said, Van Gogh never sold a painting when he was alive. Yes, but the world is changing now. So, and embroidery, before 20 years ago, the embroidery, you know, when you were doing embroidery, you had a very poor job. Now, those jobs are within LVMH, Kering, Chanel. So, things are changing. So, yes, research, it's cool, but art could be an option. Sure. Or STEMs, you know, we have now the world is really, really open on new jobs with the AI. So we have to see that differently and not to push us in a no way out.
Correct. So maybe pay attention in our best intention to make the world more scientific, to also give girls enough space to embrace also other careers when they really have that in mind and in their hearts. Thank you, all of you. It's time to turn to our guests and audience for the Q&A. What is the first question we might have? Hi.
Hello. Thank you, ladies, for your testimonials. I wanted to ask if there was science on role model, because I have worked
on role models. Is there science on role models?
I have worked for 8 years in the education fields, also on stereotypes for people coming from poor environments and feeling that they couldn't go to higher education because that was not for them. So, and one of the things that I've learned is that if the role model is too impressive, a Nobel Prize or a successful football player, it's actually counterproductive, because actually it's too hard. You know, everyone's not going to be Kylian Mbappé. So is there a science behind that? Were there any studies that show what kind of role model is actually the good role model?
Yes, there is. We teach that all the time again in our schools. Authority doesn't only come from Nobel Prizes, thankfully. Authority also comes from top models. Yeah. So what's interesting is that authority in sciences tend to come from male models, and beauty models tend to be feminine, right? So maybe rather than having just an authority figure, we need to build another principle of influence, which is unity, which is that I can identify myself in that authority figure, which is why many of you have suggested having female scientists, role models, mothers who work, etc. All of these things, mothers who fix the life box without being big scientists, all these things matter in shaping kids' behavior, because we are figures of authority, and sometimes you don't need to be a scientist. Sometimes just being a woman, you know, plunging under the coffee table to deal with that life box can go a long way.
And I think there is also the question of distance to you, what you were saying. When I was a mentor for nos quartiers ont des talents, the proximity, the fact that you talk, that you answer the question, that you're someone that is close, is also very important. My main role model were my bosses. So in that time there were few women, but still they were powerful, they were feminine. So, and that was kind of a message for me. You can have this type of path too.
Another question?
Thank you. It's more a comment than a question, but let's see. I'm lucky enough to have a 15-year-old daughter who is about to make those choices, and she's pretty bright, so she can choose anything she wants. and she hesitates a lot not to go in to keep that math expert or whatever, the specialité. And the reason why she hesitates is because what drives her is that she wants to make an impact and to solve the problems of the world today. And she knows that she can do it by science, by law, by business maybe, by many, many different ways. So a bit of a thought-provoking comment here. Maybe what we want is also make sure that boys see that multiple ways to impact the world, not only girls.
Yeah, I would like to react on that topic. So I am a mother of 3 boys. And for me, it's important also to have action towards boys, and it could really help. So we should tackle the problem globally, so to increase awareness of gender stereotypes among boys. And that's why it's important when role models go to school, they talk both to girls and boys. And okay, boys also suffer from some gender stereotypes. So they are less good at French, they don't speak as well as girls. So I think if we could support also boys in their development, it could first. I don't like to have I prefer to tackle the problem globally than to set apart and make girls in one side and boys on the other side. So I think it's very important to also help them, and it will reduce in the end gender stereotypes.
Yeah, maybe just following up what Maud is saying. When we look at our numbers, STEM careers and STEM studies, we are losing it. Almost everywhere in the world, every country. We are seeing students in undergrads going to STEM, going down. And it's not only female students, it's students in general. So this is one point, and absolutely right. We need to sell science for the common good. Although law, etc., can also contribute to common good, but you need everything. So we need scientists, and we need people working on STEM fields. The second one on role models is also about school books. One of the things on our call of action for the education sector is to have the female scientists being part of the school books from very young. Otherwise, you see men and normally old men, not even young men. So you need to inspire also from very early that they can see themselves. Oh, this is happening, and we saw it, for example, in Latin America with COVID, because of the contribution of science to vaccines and to protect people. We saw a lot of young girls saying, I want to be a virologist, I want to study illnesses because I can save the family, the community, etc., etc. And very young girls saying that the scientists are the heroes. Very interesting, because for communities was the doctors and the nurses. But for the young girls and boys, but mostly young girls, was the scientists. Because the doctors and the nurses are doing this because the scientists say this is the way to go. So role models are very important, and the connection to do it for the good of communities, it's part of the way girls are educated. We are educated to care. Even if we are a tomboy, we are supposed to cook, to know how to cook, at least even badly, to clean, to take care of people. So it's normal that you look for a profession that you can do good. And if we can show that, I think would be also opening bigger. And finally is competition that didn't came about here, the white elephant in the room. Girls are not educated, not at home, not in the schools, to fight and to compete. And these tests are usually very competitive, and therefore they run away from it. And I think this is also something that how to deconstruct this idea that you have to compete to be good.
Right, the aggressivity all around. And I love in your question, you were pointing to the lesser freedom maybe of boys as well, because not all boys want to compete, not all boys want to be aggressive. And that's also a stereotype that we need to fight. And a question mark is whether boys or girls are more constrained by stereotypes today, particularly since we mentioned about the male stereotype that is geopolitically being pushed forward pretty narrowly today. Any other question? Yes.
Hi, so thank you very much for the roundtable. So I'm an AI engineer at High Paris, and I wanted to ask a question about the environment and about being a girl in an environment full of boys. I remember when I decided what to do after high school, I was really good in math and physics. And so my father and my brother told me you should do mathematics and physics at UPMC at Jussieu, which is one of the best engineering schools or STEM schools. But I was so scared of the environment. I was scared of being the only girl or the very few girls in a class full of men. And so in the end, I did applied mathematics and economy. I regretted it because I didn't really like economy so much. I much actually preferred physics. And also, I didn't see myself as an engineer. My father was an engineer, and I didn't see myself the way he was, which was a mechanical engineer. So I was wondering, does environment also play? So the fear of being in an environment where you're not really like everybody else, or you don't really fit in. And even now that when I look at what I want to do when I apply to jobs, I tend to look at the amount of women that are in wherever I want to go to. So is that important in your case? Do you think that it's important for women or even for men to create, especially in fields where there's so many men, is it important for men to create maybe an environment where women would feel welcomed to be there?
Yeah, so I was, I think, in your position as well. So, yeah, so it's a very lonely path if you want to do scientific studies and you're a girl, because obviously we were two, I think, at the last level for me, 2 girls among 50 boys, and it was the same all the way. So of course environment plays a very huge role in deciding to engage or not in that direction, and I actually saw women colleagues from high school who dropped because of that. Like they started with me and then dropped because it was no fun. Like you're supposed to be a student and to also enjoy these years, and it was not enjoyable to be only surrounded by guys at this point. So yes, and I think as a student there's not much you can do, so it's probably something that will change if girls goes in these paths more frequently. But I know, for instance, in the lab where I am and the team where I work, we're very lucky. We have the parity, which is very rare in our domain. So we have as many women assistant and associate professors as guys. And I know that, for instance, for me, when I'm looking for PhD students, I'm going to pay more attention to women's resume than to guys. So it's positive discrimination in some way, but I'm just if I receive a resume from a girl who wants to do a PhD and I don't have any opening, still I'm going to open it and then try to find a way to make it work. So women attracts women in this type of, and so yes, of course, if you check a team and there is only guys in it, so either it sends a strong message about why it's the case, what the environment is, and yeah, you might be reluctant to engage with that team. And I have another team next to us, and they're it's been 5 years, no woman recruited in their team. And they came to me and asked how do we attract girls? And so I told them they said we're very open, we have nothing against women applications, they just don't have any applications for women. And I said, you have to go and look for them. And this is something someone said, from Capgemini. I told them, you have to look for them. You don't have to wait for them to come to you. And if a company is not coming to pick you and it's only guys in it, just don't go. Thank you. Okay.
I fully agree with what you said, but I'm questioned by the way you were presenting your path within your family. And my question is, what's the role and what is the role of the society in terms of you waiting a nice arena for women to be there? And that's questioning me, because you have your place wherever you are, and you don't need someone welcoming you, and if there is tension, you're able to fight. You have the force in you to fight. And this, fact, what you were saying regarding that it's sometimes less convenient and we prefer to have more nice arena. Okay, but in terms of career path, in terms of your destiny and where you will go, there, and don't wait anyone to open the door. You're able to open the door. You have the strength in you to do it by your own. And that's very important for me, that you make that yours, because if we are all waiting for someone else to help us, it will never happen. So take your destiny.
Thank you very much.
Maybe one reason why the number one requested intervention to HEC is leadership. People are thirsty for leadership, and that's one way to say it. Maybe indeed one of the first things to know is that you can do it, embrace that, and then know that at least in scientific careers, the doors are wider open than they've ever been, at least for women at the moment. That would be one way to look at it, as opposed to waiting for someone to come get you.
It's sort of related to what you just said, but going back to high school 4 years, something we didn't really talk about is the bullying between students in high school. For the fact on one side that there's kind of the stereotypes around STEM when you're a teenager, that you might be a nerd if you're good in math. This can create bullying between students. If you're in girls, there's even added to that the gender stereotypes. So I guess based on this conversation, the hope is on the long term, if we break down all these stereotypes, there will be less bullying between students in high school. But now, if you would see like a girl, 15-year-old, being bullied because she's good in math and so she's part in this category, what would you tell her?
It's a very important question. I've faced that. Me, when I was young, I've faced that with my children. It's super complex. You don't have a magic wand. Taking out, facing. It's for me the important thing is to disclose. So don't stay alone. Disclose it. Make the other part of the thing, and after that, the only what I have testimony in my, it's time. It's hurting, so you don't take this. You're wounded, and after that, it takes time to recover. But it's not black and white. It's not the end. It's just a difficult moment. So bullying is really at stake. In all the schools of my children, I've seen lots of conferences in order to address that subject, but still the popular one in that class that is making laugh of this one, it's still happening, even if it's not happening on the social network, it's happening in the class. So the way you vous entourez, you get friends around you in order to get better force is very important, and bullying, it's really a subject, but not only for girls in science, it's everywhere.
Any final question? All right. So if I were to summarize what we said today, so we started with there are many, many parameters discussed in research. There's extensive understanding that the problem of women and girls in science is multifactorial, all well said. We did identify a few elephants, not one, but a few, right? So stereotypes, the importance of creating new stereotypes, creating a new environment in which girls and boys, a new world, scientific world that's more welcoming of gender balance. That's also on the table. We talked about authority figures a lot. We talked about surrounding yourself with good peers. We talked about taking self-confidence up and taking also responsibility for how you're going to lead your life. We also talked about encouraging girls to go into science or not. That may be also something we need as a generation to embrace a little more. Maybe we're a little too intense on the topic. And in any case, what I retain is that it takes a village. It takes a village. It doesn't take an authority figure or money only. We have 3.3 billion euros apparently of public money that is not well used at the moment. It could be better used, but we're going to leave it to other people to discuss. Maybe we have managed to inspire you for the next year until our next roundtable to consider your own lives, to consider at your own level for yourself and for the people around you what you can do to have a world more welcoming of women in science, invoking role models, talking about women in science, talking about women in non-science, talking to young girls, whatever their age, and encouraging them to see the future as filled with opportunities rather than threats. And with that, I wish to thank our auditors, our guests today. Thank you all for joining us and sharing your extremely rich visions on this topic. And I wish everyone a belated, again, International Day of Women and Girls in Science. And see you next year.